So we're on fearlessness today at the Oak Shield Circle. I feel like it might be good to talk about the way that the kind of fearlessness that we're talking about has ramifications both on a inner level and a external level. I think people who hang around this circle will quickly get the sense that when we talk about fearlessness, we're not talking about the fearlessness of a bull, which charges forward and basically topples over whatever is threatening to the bull. But we're talking about the fearlessness of a mountain, which I feel like is a valuable metaphor to explore in part because when we have that kind of fearlessness that is willing to be right here, we're not running away from anything in our experience. So, from a spiritual growth point of view, that radical kind of fearlessness that isn't trying to escape our experience allows our awareness to really soak into everything that's happening in the moment. So, as odd as it may sound to describe the path of warriorship this way, we would do ourselves a disservice to not emphasize for each other that as we're walking the path of a spiritual warrior, as we're walking the path of a non-violent warrior, we're actually healing ourselves. When we have the kind of fearlessness that really allows us to radically meet life, both the inside of life, our feelings, our thoughts, our fears, our sense of limitation, and fully meeting the external landscape, which is always filtered through what's happening on the inside anyway. So at a certain point, the inside and the outside, we can't really make a total distinction between them. When we really have that kind of fearlessness that allows us to encounter both, we've set ourselves up for a really beautiful dynamic that marks what spiritual warriorship is all about, which is to say that in meeting life fully and not shying away from either the inside or the outside of life, we are more able to meet the challenges that arrive to us in the world and more able to feel as though we have the inner capacity to rise up to challenges, all the while maintaining the kind of nowness presence that's emphasized in any spiritual path. So the mountain fearlessness is a fearlessness that allows us to be fully here, in the same way that spiritual traditions and teachers who don't talk about warriorship at all will emphasize that sort of nowness presence. It's just that warriorship is just one angle to talk about that. And even deeper than just being angled to talk about it, it's actually a path to undergo that radical way of being, that radical presence that it does have a unique surface area, a unique landscape than, we could say the path of a monk, who the monk doesn't really need to think about fearlessness that much because the kind of openness, the kind of presence that they are arriving in is a very sheltered, cloistered presence in which the stability and safety of the environment allows them to just drop into being. But if we, want to be in the world and we want to arrive at the same depth of presence that a monk arrives at in the cloister, we have to learn to be very unafraid of life and the world, unafraid of our roles, our responsibilities, our challenges. And when we can really start to embody that mountain fearlessness, the same kind of presence will that a monk reaches in many ways will have an opening in our lives to for us to start to experience and develop that kind of deep, deep presence. So practically speaking, I can just throw in a little practical example around how that might um, actually look in our life. We at the Shield Circle, we're talking about living in the modern world with the heart of a warrior. We're not talking about acting like a warrior that we see in a film or see in a video game. But we're saying, how can that same level of courage and that same level of dedication to challenges that we see represented in film and media and even some video games, how can we live our lives as they are and with the modern challenges that we face um, with that same depth of dedication and courage and presence? It'd be more accurate to say that same courage and dedication is a doorway to the depth of presence that all spiritual traditions are pointing to. But for a practical example, we could say, like, let's say we are at a workplace where we have to work on a problem collaboratively, and there's someone in the workplace who just really pushes our buttons, like someone who just really um, makes us feel frustrated or angry or exasperated. If we were saying to ourselves in this community that we would apply the fearlessness of a bull in that moment, which would be to just basically, whether vocally or I mean hopefully in the workplace environment vocally, um, vocally or in some other more extreme way, kind of barrel towards what we perceived as a threat to our well-being. Basically saying, "You're making me feel not good. I should therefore remove um, the cause, which happens to be another person, from my experience." Very quickly we can imagine how in a workplace setting that would get you in trouble. I mean, unless you were upper level management and had some sort of hierarchical seniority over the person who frustrated you, you might get away with it then, but you'd probably, lessen your reputation as a decent boss or manager or human being. But if you were like the same level in the organization or equal level of position, and you try to just barrel that person out of your experience, you would probably get some pushback from that, and it became a pattern in your life. You might even get fired. But what if we would choose to live a mountain-like fearlessness in that moment? In Dzogchen teachings, they told people to actually um, think of themselves as a mountain and to not be afraid of. I've heard one teacher, Lama Suryadas, emphasize this. He says, you know, sit like the mountain and don't be afraid of anything that grows on it. So if you're sitting like a mountain and you feel frustration or anger, while the bull would be enraged and rush forward towards whatever it felt like was causing it. The mountain is unafraid of the fire of anger on their body, you could say, on their the landscape of that they inhabit or are. So you can see there that there's a kind of fearlessness that allows us to be unafraid of the immediate sensations of whatever we're experiencing. So we're sitting there, we're talking to this person who we've labeled as the the source of our negative feeling, when in reality it's just, or at one layer of reality, I should say, it's just an aspect of what they're doing that is bringing up something in you. So on some level, you are the source of your frustration. Your mind is generating it. So a spiritual warrior or a nonviolent warrior who knows how to live that mountain-like fearlessness would say, or just kind of instinctually remember in themselves that this person here who's irritating me or who's bringing up very negative feelings in my body is actually just a catalyst that's bringing up my own emotions. And as someone who's committed as a nonviolent warrior to creating environment of um, acceptance and well-being for the people around me, it's actually my duty in this moment to just feel the feelings and not get rid of them, not try to get rid of the so-called cause. And so on one level, that creates an environment where there's a greater chance for social harmony and social safety, you could say. And on another level, it actually creates an opportunity in that moment for us to deepen into awareness of whatever our difficult emotions are or our fears are. And that level of presence is the same kind of presence that heals us regardless of any spiritual path. So if we go through enough moments where we're able to have that unconditional presence, acceptance of these sort of experiences, the greater the degree is that they will start to dissipate. So the Buddhists would say that's how you dissipate your karma. So I hope that that helps a little bit to talk about fearlessness and how it actually counterintuitively compared to the models of warriorship that we've been given in Western culture, how that actually facilitates healing and simultaneously creates a environment of social harmony and you could say protection.